Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. Well, today we're going to jump in and start tutorial number 5 on the Sleepy Hollow display. And we're going to take a look today at how we're going to create the stumps that are going to be sitting beside the broom, which is finished, to hold some of the additional witch hollow pieces. And so I think what I'm going to do is build 4 stumps of 2 the same size and 2 a different size. So you'll see that as we go through, but I think that's the plan. I don't know exactly how I'm going to do this yet. I've got an idea and we're going to run with that and see how it turns out. And then we'll adjust fire if we need to do that later. But for now, that's sort of the plan. This will probably be a multi-day tutorial, so by the time you see it, a couple of days will have probably passed because it's going to take some drying time, I think. At least the way I plan on doing these. I may use hot glue, I may use PVA glue, undetermined at this point. But with that, let's jump in and take a look at the supplies that I do have that I am going to use for certain. Okay, so the supplies that I've got, obviously I've got a 2-inch pink foam insulation. I picked this up at Home Depot or Lowe's. This is from a 4x8 foot sheet, and they've got these serrated kind of lines you can see here on the edge where you can kind of break these. It's just the way they come. I don't like that, but it sort of is what it is. You can see them on really both sides. And then I use some hot wire tools to cut this down to a more manageable piece that I can use to kind of trace out some circles. Now, having traced out the circles, here's the big secret here. I used a paper plate. You guys have seen me use paper plates plenty of times before, and a Sharpie to kind of get some preliminary circles on the board, just to kind of measure out how I want to do this. Now, the more that I started thinking about doing this, I want these to be sort of the same size, so when I stack them up, it's easier to carve, but it's not critical that they're exactly the same size. And it's not critical that I get them all the same shape. As a matter of fact, I don't think I really want too much of a circle. Maybe I do, I don't know. So I'm gonna build the first stump and we're gonna see how that looks. Now this is 2 inches thick, okay? And so 2 inches thick, so I think the first stump that I'm gonna do is probably gonna be 6 to 8 inches tall, and then maybe the other stump is 4 to 6 or something like that. 2 different sizes of 4 stumps each. So we'll see how that comes together as we start putting this together. But I don't know that I'm going to, once I get these cut out, I don't know that if I want to put the white PVA glue and sandwich it together, put some weights on it and let it sit for a few days, or if I just want to put some hot glue on it and glue it down and go with that. The hot glue, as you guys know, is certainly going to be a lot quicker. It's also going to be a lot more glue, hot glue, to have to put down to make that remotely possible. And the more glue you put down, the longer it takes, and so there may be seams, and I'd like to try to avoid that. So I'm rambling. And so the first stump is going to be done as a test stump. You're gonna get to see it just like I'm gonna get to see it. And then we'll determine at that point if we go forward and continue to produce them like that, or if we need to change some things and change it up a little bit. So with that, let's relocate out to the garage, and I'm gonna start cutting these out with my hot wire foam tools. Okay, so you can see I'm out in the garage. I got a little bit of a different camera angle going, but you can see I've got my hot wire foam factory tool, a transformer plugged in. I've got the 6-inch or 8-inch knife plugged in, and we're getting ready to start cutting some foam. You guys have seen me do this before, so I'll reposition the camera a little bit so you can see how we're going to do this. And we're just going to simply start cutting these out to somewhat close of a shape, and then we'll detail them once we glue them together. Okay, so here we go. We're going to start with this one down here and just start cutting this out and seeing what it's going to look like. Okay, so we got the first one cut out. And I'm just gonna do, I think, the rest of them off camera. You guys have, I mean, this is not rocket science here, so this is pretty basic. So I'm just gonna, you see the tracing that I've got there. I'm just gonna continue to cut some of those out, and then we're gonna see how they're going to look as we put them together and see what kind of glue we're gonna look. But I mean, you can kind of see the look already of just the hot knife kind of cutting through there. And so then once we get some really good details in when they're all glued together, I think it's gonna look pretty good. Okay, so all the cutting is done. I'm just kind of letting the tool burn off the excess foam there. I've got several pieces cut out and starting to be stacked up. Now, at some point when they're glued, and this is not indicative of how this is going to look, but it is indicative of the height that I'm trying to go for. So once these are all glued down, we'll take a sanding block and sort of kind of get some of these ridges. You see there'll be some ridges, and I just kind of experimented with that a little bit. You can see a good ridge there. We'll kind of get rid of some of those ridges before we start to really carve this thing up and make it look like a stump. And so these will be obviously a whole bunch of lines in here. It's gonna take a whole lot of painstaking detail to make this look like a stump. And then I told you there's gonna be sort of a face on the front of this, sort of like a haunted stump. I will probably do most of that with a Dremel tool, and then some of the extra pieces from cutting these out will be used with a sanding block and a Dremel tool with some sanding attachments on it to kind of shape eyebrows and noses and things like that, and to kind of affix those on here. And that way when it's done, then once all the lines are in and all the detail and the face, then we'll paint it a flat black like we do everything else, and then we'll start detailing it with the browns and the different shades of dry brushing to get it to look like a stump. At least that's the plan. So this is 1, 2, 3, 4 of those stacks, the 2-inch foam. So this is 8 inches in height. And so I think if this turns out the way that I hope that it turns out, then I'll reproduce one more of these, and then I'll either make a 6-inch or maybe a 2-inch. I'm not exactly sure. I want to check the proportions next to the broom and see how everything is starting to look. And you know me, symmetry is incredibly important in my display, so I just need to make sure that whatever I do looks appropriate with the broom in the middle. So we'll cross that bridge at some point, but I think I'm going to hot glue these down just in the interest of time. It should be a whole lot easier. And so let me get the hot glue gun set up, and then I'll come back, we'll hot glue these down, and then once that's done, we can start then the detailing process on with the hot wire foam tools to make these look more like representative of a big old scary stump. So let me get the hot glue gun set up and we'll go from there. Okay, so I'm back. I've got 2 of the 4 pieces sitting ready to go. And one thing that I did do, I want to show you, is I took this sort of real stiff metal brush, and you can kind of see the detail there, and kind of scored up the underside of the top piece and the top of the bottom piece. And that's hopefully, especially if I was using a white PVA glue, that would certainly help it to adhere. I think it will do the same thing with the hot glue. And so that will help the glue to adhere. And then I did get some of these skewers. And then once these are all 4 glued together, we're gonna take a hammer and drive some of these skewers down to kind of keep it protected that way too, and to give it more reinforcement so that it stays together. I think honestly the way to go may be the PVA glue, but you guys know me and I've talked about my patience before. So we're gonna try the hot glue and see how that works, and let's get started. Okay, so now we're going to drive some of these skewers down into them. We'll go all the way to the bottom. Okay, we'll just cut these off like so. And we'll settle these down with a file or something like that to where as we get a little closer along. But I think that's good to get ready to start to do some sanding with. So that's what we're going to do next is the sanding. So we'll take our sanding block here and just start sanding. Okay, so there it is all together. Doesn't feel like it's going to come apart. It feels like it's fairly secure. There are some cracks in there, but I think those will go away once we start carving this like a stump. And so that's what we're going to do next. Let me get some tools set up and I'll be right back. Okay, so I think for this, I'm going to use the handheld engraving tool, and it's on a high setting because I want to melt it into the stump. And I think I'm just going to, kind of go through and put lines into this thing. This is going to be the time-consuming part. This is going to take the most time of any of this. But I think when it's done, it'll look fairly good. So the way I plan on starting is just simply letting the lines just kind of run their course down through here. Okay, so here we are. I'm a little disappointed. I mean, yeah, I like the texturing. I think that serves the purpose, and I think that would look good painted. I'm concerned that I can still see 4 distinct pieces of wood, and I thought about maybe some putty or something, but I don't think that would work. I think you would still see it. What I would like to have, and what I may try to find, I'm gonna finish this just to see what it's going to look like, but if I had some white, real thick foam, and I may try to find some at a hardware store, or I've got some friends here locally that does some spa type installations and stuff, and I know they get quite a bit of foam, and it's pretty thick, and if I could get maybe a piece of foam about this thick. It doesn't need to be very, big. It just needs to be thick enough. One piece of foam, this would look spectacular, I think, once it's all detailed. So I think what I'm going to try to do is, this is what I would not recommend that you do at home. This is foam. This is the thicker foam, so this spray paint won't eat into this foam quite as bad, but this is not a water-based paint. This is a aerosol-based paint, which aerosol will deteriorate and destroy foam. So, and if you stand far enough away, it looks certainly better. And so what I think I'm going to try to do is just take a spot that, would be, maybe like this area here, and paint it and see what it's going to look like once it's painted. I mean, maybe this will mask all of that and you'll never notice it, but right now it's all I see, and it looks like 4 pieces of wood stacked on each other to me. So once I get it painted, I'll come back and show you what it's done to the foam, and if it looks okay, and then we'll go from there before I decide I'm going to finish this particular piece. So more to follow. Okay, well, I'm back and I've got spray paint on it. Actually, I stood back quite a ways, but the spray paint didn't do really too much to the foam. This is a pretty thick foam. It's pretty robust, and it looks pretty good. It's starting to look a little bit better, I think. It's not certainly perfect, but it does take a little bit. I mean, you can still see them, but not nearly like you can on this side, right? So this is the painted side. This is the non-painted side. So it does take quite a bit of that away. So I'm gonna let this dry, and then we're gonna dry brush some brown on it and see what that looks like, and see if we wanna continue using this method or try to find some different type of foam before we get too far into this project. Okay, so this is dry enough to start dry brushing some brown to see, and I say dry brush, it's gonna be a pretty thick coat initially, just to see how this is going to look, if we're even gonna continue down this road, or if it's going to be so obvious that it's stacked wood. And I think we may be getting our answer here shortly. So let's keep kind of going at this a little bit. Okay, we'll let that dry and we'll come back. I think it's going to still look like obviously stacked pieces of wood together, and I don't know that that's the look that I'm going for. So more to follow. Let's let this dry and we'll do another dry brush with a different color and see if we're getting any closer. Well, hey, I'm back in my kitchen. It's been a couple of days since I posted the last video. The inaugural stump is done. I'll be honest with you, I don't really like the way it turned out. I mean, this would work in a pinch, and certainly in some low lighting, it would look okay, I think. The problem is, and I'll show you, you can still see the individual layers in this piece of foam. And so not exactly what I was looking for. And so I'm gonna try some different methodologies with this particular stump. I'm gonna try a different carving technique to see if that works. If it does, I will repost an updated video to show you what I've done with that. I anticipate that it won't. But I'll get into that here in a moment. And so before we go any further, let me show you what I've got. So this is the stump, and it looks, I mean, the paint is okay. It's not incredibly detailed, like I said. The problem is, and now that I pointed out, you'll never not be able to unsee it, as you can see individual layers, right? And I just don't like that. If it was one piece of wood, one layer, that would be great, but the stack up here is not, it's not ideal. And so I tried various techniques on the other side. I tried to use a heat gun to kind of melt it a little bit and see if it would kind of go away. You can see it helps a little bit, but you can also see what it does to the side of the foam. So that doesn't work. So this side looks best, but you can still see the stacks. And so I don't want to use this. And this was more of a trial just to see how this was going to look. And oh, by the way, most of this was painted with spray paint. It didn't really damage the foam at all because I held it back quite a ways in order to do that. So this is the final product. This is what it looks like. Again, I don't like the individual layers that you see. So how do we get around that? How do we fix it? Well, there's a couple of things, schools of thought that I've got. One is I've got a buddy who's also in our local Department 56 club. He also runs the Random Junk YouTube channel. So if you haven't checked out Derek and the Random Junk channel, go to and look his channel up. He does a lot of repairs on Department 56 pieces, a lot of repairs on Limax pieces and things like that, plus just a whole host of other stuff. His channel is absolutely wonderful, a lot of knowledge there. However, he also does sort of a spa type business where they deliver and set up and you know, big spas here in Arizona. And by doing that, he has access to some pretty significant pieces of foam, thicker pieces, solid pieces. And so I've reached out to him and said, hey, the next time you're doing a delivery, which I think is this coming week, can you grab me the biggest pieces of foam that you've got? Because if I could do this is exactly the height that I'm looking for. This is 8 inches. These are 2-inch pieces. This is an 8-inch stack up. And if I could get an 8-inch piece of foam about this size, one piece where we don't have to worry about all this, I can just shape it, sand it, carve it, you know, burn it, whatever I need to do to get it to look like this stump, and then we paint it and detail it. That's exactly what I envision. That's exactly what I'm looking for. So if I can find some of those pieces, or if you know any other place to get them. I've looked online at on Amazon. I've looked online at Home Depot and Lowe's. I couldn't find anything. There may be some, I thought maybe some feed stores may have something like that. I don't know. I haven't researched it in a lot of detail yet. Our son is still home from his middle of his travels from Germany to San Antonio, and so we're still spending some time with him. So I haven't researched a ton of it yet. I plan on doing that. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to end this section of this tutorial with this and saying, hey, this would work in a pinch. I mean, if you have nothing else, this would work. And the farther back you get and the darker it is in the room, this would absolutely look like a stump, especially if you've got some, moss around it and some, a lot of detail around it and on it. You're not really going to be, your eyes aren't going to be then drawn so much to this. But that, you guys know that that's not the way that I work. I have to have things, symmetry and things a certain way, and it's not where I want it to be. So I want to post the videos though, because I think that there's some helpful information on carving and, doing this stuff that will help you out, especially if you're not making a huge stump. You're only making, 2-inch thick or what have you. Or if you've got access to a big piece of foam, the carving and things like that would still be the same. But I want you to have access to that. I think it's beneficial. There's some other good things in the video that I think you guys can learn from, and most of the techniques will remain the same. So, but what we'll continue to do then is review the Department 56 witch hollow pieces here in the next week until I can get my hands on that thicker foam. And then once I do get, receive some of that thicker foam, and if I look at it and I determine that it will work, then we'll just replicate the same tutorial where I'll show you how I'll do that. And that'll be, part 6 going into witch hollow, and we'll carve those and call them done. So that's how we're going to end this one. Unfortunately, I'm just not happy with it. If you have other ideas, now I have had some other folks, leave comments and say, hey, I used the expanding foam to create mine, just like I did for the trees, and that's a great idea also, and I have not completely, given up on that either. The problem is you've got to make some sort of an armature, and that could be as simple as a toilet paper roll with some tape around it and some, clumps of paper towels or newspaper or what have you to kind of get the general shape. And then you do the foam around that and kind of shape it. And I thought about doing that, and then thought about, I could probably still burn the lines in there with my hot wire foam factory tools after it starts to dry. And if not, I could certainly do it with a razor blade or a box knife or some sort of a sharp object to go through and kind of carve that out. Haven't given up on that yet. Haven't even tried that yet. So once I get my hands on the foam and I see if that's going to work, if I can't find the foam, or if he gives me the foam and it's just simply not big enough to put a witch hollow house on, then I have no alternative. I've got to go use something else, which will likely be that expanding foam. I've never used it, so you'll get to see, if we go that route, you'll get to see that, as it happens as well, just like you did with this one. I've never done this before, so wanted to try it, and here we are. So we'll see if we go down that route, how that works out too. That may be a great alternative. It may work out just perfectly. I'm sure that it would. But we'll cross that bridge, I guess, when we get there. Let's see if we can get the big thick foam first, and then we'll see what happens after that. So, hey, like always, if you've liked this video and you find it beneficial, make sure you click the like button. If you have comments or suggestions or other ideas that I haven't thought of yet that you think would work, please leave those in the comments. I try to read every single one. I try to respond to every single one. It takes me a little while to get to them, but I try to always get to every single one of those. I enjoy reading your comments and hearing your thoughts. So if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please consider doing so. It certainly helps the channel to grow. I do appreciate it. And until we do the next review, which will be coming this coming week, we'll probably get 2 or 3 reviews knocked out this week, since I'm waiting on some material to go forward with the tutorial. We'll get some witch hollow buildings and accessories, coordinating pieces reviewed for you guys, so you can see the rest of the collection. And then again, we'll talk to you real soon. So enjoy the rest of your weekend. Take care of yourselves and take care of each other. Bye-bye.